Hey friends, and welcome to another episode of Phantom Curiosities. Today's episode is going to be super creepy, spooky, and festive for the holiday season about none other than Krampus. So you can definitely subscribe for more videos like this. We do videos every Monday and Friday here on this channel. Beauty makeups, body paintings, effects videos, turning into creepy and beautiful characters, Halloween year round. So subscribe and hit that notification button if you would love to see more. Now, Krampus is a mythical creature that's been around for so long. Is he real? Is he not? Today we're going to get into it and the history behind Krampus. A mangled, deranged face with bloodshot eyes tops a furry black body. Giant horns curl up from his head, displaying his half-goat, half-demon lineage. Behind this terror, a dozen more stomp through the snow of the streets of Linz, Austria. Among a din of cowbell jingles, the creatures dashed through the streets, chasing giggling children and adults alike, poking them with sticks and scarring some with the realization that they were naughty this year. Linz's annual Krampus parade, also known as Pertentlauf, resurrects a centuries-old tradition. Young men in town dress up as the mythical creature and parade through the streets in an ancient pagan ritual meant to disperse winter's ghosts. They march dressed in fur suits and carved wooden masks and carrying cowbells. The tradition, also known as Krampuslauf or Krampus Run, is having a resurgence throughout Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, and has gained recognition in the United States. The creature has become so popular in recent times that he has a comic book series, parties of his own, and even a new movie. After all, the organizer of the Krampus Festival be held for the first time in Orlando, Florida. Watch out when Santa Claus comes into town, because Krampus is coming to get you. Krampus himself historically comes around the night of December 5th, tagging along with St. Nicholas. He visits houses all night with his saintly pal, while St. Nick is on hand to put candy in the shoes of good kids and birch twigs in the shoes of the bad. Krampus's particular speciality is punishing naughty children. Legend has it that throughout the Christmas season, misbehaved kids are beaten with birch branches or can disappear, stuffed into Krampus' sack and hauled off to his lair to be tortured or eaten. The Krampus is the yin to St. Nick's yang. You have the saint, you have the devil. It taps into the subconscious macabre desire that a lot of people have that is the opposite of the sacred Christmas a lot of us grew up with. In fact, Krampus roots have nothing to do with Christmas. Instead, they date back to pre-Germanic paganism in the region. His name originates with the German Krampen, which means claw, and tradition has it he is the son of the Norse god of the underworld. During the 12th century, the Catholic Church attempted to banish Krampus celebrations because of his resemblance to the devil. More eradicated attempts followed in 1934 at the hands of Austria's conservative Christian Social Party. But none of it held, and Krampus emerged as a much feared and beloved holiday force. For some, the annual festival of child hunting Krampus is fun, but concerns that refugees in the Alpine towns that celebrate Krampus could find the tradition frightful has promoted some towns to consider taming the horror. This year, Krampus' scheduled arrival in the Alpine towns that celebrate him coincides with an influx of refugees from Syria and Afghanistan. Though the festival is well loved, it gave rise to concerns that the new neighbors might be scared of the tradition and its nightmare-fueling costumes. Rather than canceling the parade, town officials decided to educate newcomers. The refugee children were invited to a presentation where they learned about the props, costumes, and customs of Krampus. Perhaps you'll be the next to catch the Krampus spirit this holiday. After all, the horrible honk could very well be watching you. Because Krampus isn't just a one-of-a-kind demon, but there's actually a whole race of them. They're called Perchten, and they developed out of the Alpine pagan folklore that said the long winter months needed to be scared away. Men dressed in animal masks would wander the villages to do just that, and over time, these super scary creatures they were pretending to be developed into the furry horned beasts we're recognized today as Krampus. They almost disappeared entirely during the Dark Ages when they were targeted alongside witches for complete and total eradication. One single person was plucked from the herd and adopted into Christian traditions as Krampus. As early as the 1600s, he was appearing alongside the very Christian St. Nicholas as a polar opposite. He was punished while St. Nicholas was rewarded, and he became an evil, horrific reminder of just what waited when all people, not just children, were naughty. That was an idea the church could let slide, so Krampus survived while his brethren faded into obscurity. Strictly speaking, Krampus isn't even a Christmas demon. Ancient folklore and National Geographic says he walked the land on the night of December 5th, which was called Krampusnacht. That's Krampus night, if you're rusty on German. Excuse my mispronunciation, but the date wasn't arbitrary. It's the night before Nicholasdog, St. Nicholas Day. December 6th was traditionally the mornings all boys and girls, good and bad, would be checked to see if they've gotten a present from St. Nicholas or a switch from Krampus. Krampus is making a comeback in many European countries, and once again is being celebrated on December 5th. The Krampus celebrations featuring a full Krampus dress and plenty of alcohol are popping up from Krampus pagan homeland all the way to Michigan, with many Krampus celebrations going intentionally old school. The earliest Krampus masks were made of wood, and European artisans are making some incredible, one-of-a-kind, handmade masks just for these Krampus celebrations. Krampus celebrations are pretty tame, although some people still get hurt. In 2015, The Independent reported on some Krampus-related injuries at a Salzburg parade, but the old-school celebrations make a few bruises look like a walk in the park. It is told that Krampus was a very real threat to kids. A journalist family told her stories of waiting in the darkness, terrified, hearing the clamor of strange voices coming from outside the window. On that night, they rethought all the life choices they had made that previous year. Even if you'd been good, there was a real chance Krampus could burst through your door, grab you, and carry you out into the night. That Krampus was, of course, someone wearing a costume. The journalist's father told her that it didn't matter even if you knew that. It's always about the waiting that was the worst. The silence before the onslaught, he said. It didn't matter that those people in the costumes were our neighbors or that they were perfectly normal people every other night of the year. On that night, Krampus was totally real. If you do some digging into the Krampus folklore, you might want to give the poor guy a break. He's usually carrying chains, but not as a threat. He's carrying them because he's a slave, and St. Nicholas is his master. That's according to Al Ridenour, an author of the book about Krampus. He says that the popular belief about Krampus is that he's punishing kids because that's what Krampus does. It's largely wrong. He's only doing what he does because St. Nicholas can't be bothered to get his hands dirty. And those chains, they're a reminder that he's completely subservient to the will of the more Christian entity. He's a reminder that you can't have good without evil. And maybe it's not his fault. He likes his job. Today, the most kids need to worry about is not getting everything on their list, but Krampus had other ideas about how to punish bad behavior. Krampus brought a whole lot of pain, and his favorite way to deal with the less angelic was to pick up the naughty with his tongue, stuff them in his sack, and carry them home. There, they joined him for dinner, and they were the main course. If they were lucky, there were other things kids were told they need to watch out for. Krampus might just torture them a bit before eating them. And even if he didn't decide to take them away, there was still the possibility they'd get an old-fashioned whipping. Finally, if a child wasn't quite palatable enough, he or she might be cast into a frozen lake or dragged to hell instead. or being torn to pieces and eaten. But still, it was just framed as just what the child deserved. What goes around comes around, the saying goes, and Krampus is bringing it. Krampus isn't just for Christmas, and he's not just for Krampusnacht either, the celebration. A journalist for The Independent says Krampus was a year-round presence, and Austrian kids who even considered misbehaving were reminded what waited for them if Krampus got wind of what they were planning. If a warning didn't work, there was always a friend or neighbor who was more than willing to don the costume and put some good old-fashioned fear of Krampus into any troublesome tyke. According to traditions, many homes had a constant reminder of Krampus' all-seeing presence. Parents would exchange bundles of birch sticks painted gold and hang them up at home. The bundles, called Ruten, were a reminder that there would come a time when the consequences would need to be paid for any bad actions. An elf on the shelf hasn't got anything on Krampus. There's a female version of Krampus, and she's called Frau Perchant, Berta, Bertie, or even Hulda, depending on the region. She never entirely made the leap into Christianity like Krampus did, and that's probably because she's both sides of the coin, good and evil. She was both a master and a goddess figure, both hideous and beautiful, both Krampus and both Saint Nicholas. Even though she hasn't achieved the same level of popularity as Krampus, her terrifying traditional appearance during the 12 days of Christmas were recorded by folklorist Jacob Grimm. He says she was known for giving silver coins to boys and girls, while the bad ones would be sliced open, disemboweled, and restuffed with straws and rocks. Merry Christmas. She makes the occasional appearance at Krampusnacht celebrations even today, and she's just as terrifying now as she was then. Krampus has always been the subject of tales told in Eastern Europe. By the end of the 19th century, his demonic image was even popping up on Christmas cards. It wasn't until the 21st century that he really came across the pond. There's one person you should thank for introducing you to Krampus. Blab magazine's Mont Blechamp, he's the one who first published this image in the US, initially in his magazine, and then set them in books. It was the artwork that first caught his attention, and he told Collectors Weekly that if you find some early turn-of-the-century Krampus postcards, you have something incredibly rare. Most were destroyed during World Wars, and he says he's found some pretty weird stuff when it comes to Krampus's history, even weirder than accepted folklore. In the 1950s, there was a brief movement that repainted evil Krampus as sexy Krampus, but that was thankfully short-lived. Because now, we're still all about evil Krampus. And that is some history and folklore behind Krampus. I think it is super interesting. There's so many tales behind the folklore of where he came from, pagan traditions, and how he's painted in postcards in the US, across the world. Leave a comment down below on what you would love to see on Phantom Curiosities next. We have so many creepy hauntings, dolls, and figures to paint. So I'll see you then. Sweet dreams and good night, creators. Bye.